A young girl stood outside Buckingham Palace, quietly selling paintings to fund her chemotherapy. Most people walked past, some whispered, and a few scoffed. But when a royal guard suddenly stepped forward, breaking protocol in a way no one expected, the entire crowd was left stunned. Here's what happened. But before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Also, make sure to check out our second channel, Guard Patrol, linked in the pinned comments, because we upload daily at the same time on both channels. So, subscribe to both and never miss a powerful story. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Buckingham Palace as Lily Matthews carefully arranged her paintings against the ancient stone wall. Her small hands, marked with traces of paint and determination, trembled slightly as she positioned each piece. Watercolours of London landscapes, each one carrying a story of resilience in its brushstrokes. At 13, Lily carried herself with a grace that seemed beyond her years. Her pale blue dress had been chosen with care, though it hung somewhat loose on her thin frame. A colourful scarf, wrapped around her head, couldn't quite hide the telltale signs of her ongoing battle, but her eyes sparkled with an artist's spirit that no illness could dim. Guard Michael Thompson noticed her arrival from his post, his trained eyes taking in every detail while maintaining his ceremonial stillness. Through years of service, including 2 tours in Afghanistan, he'd learned to observe without seeming to watch. Something about the young girl's careful movements and determined expression caught his attention, a warrior's spirit he recognized, though her battlefield was far different from any he'd known. "Look at those colours," an early morning tourist whispered to her companion, pausing to admire Lily's work. "The way she's captured the palace light." Her voice trailed off as she noticed the girl's condition, her admiration mixing with that particular kind of pity that Lily had grown too familiar with. Lily straightened her display, checking each price tag with careful fingers. The numbers were modest, far less than the hours of work each piece represented, but necessity had taught her to be practical. Every sale brought her closer to her goal, though the growing stack of medical bills at home sometimes made that goal feel impossibly distant. "Mummy, why is that girl selling pictures?" a young boy's voice carried across the courtyard. His mother's hushed response about being kind and understanding made Lily's shoulders tense slightly, but she kept arranging her work, pretending not to hear. The morning crowd was beginning to build, tourists gathering for the changing of the guard. Some paused to look at Lily's paintings, their expressions ranging from genuine interest to uncomfortable awareness. A group of teenagers huddled nearby, their whispered comments just loud enough for her to catch fragments. "Shouldn't be here," and "kind of sad, really." But Lily held her head high, just as she did during each hospital visit, each treatment session. Her art teacher had always said that true artists pour their souls into their work, and Lily's soul shone through each careful brushstroke. The palace gardens in spring, the Thames at sunset, the city lights reflecting off rain-soaked streets. Each painting was a moment of beauty captured during her hardest days, a reminder that life held wonder even in its darkest hours. Guard Thompson maintained his perfect posture, but his awareness remained focused on the young artist. Through his peripheral vision, he could see her straightening despite her obvious fatigue, adjusting her scarf with one hand, while greeting potential customers with a smile that somehow made her whole face glow. In 15 years of guard duty, he'd developed an instinct for reading people, and something about this girl's quiet determination struck a chord deep within his soldier's heart. The morning sun climbed higher, its warmth beginning to fill the courtyard as Lily finished her display. 12 paintings, each one a piece of her heart, each one a step toward a goal that sometimes felt as distant as the horizons she loved to paint. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and prepared to face whatever the day might bring, unaware that she had already caught the attention of someone who understood more about courage than most. The first customers of the day were an elderly British couple who approached Lily's display with genuine interest. The woman, wearing a carefully pressed floral dress, bent closer to examine a watercolour of the Thames at dawn. "My word," she said, her voice warm with appreciation. "You've captured the morning mist perfectly, dear. George, come look at this." Her husband adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, leaning in to study the painting. "Remarkable detail," he nodded approvingly. "You've quite a talent, young lady. How long have you been painting?" His kind eyes met Lily's, carrying none of the pity she'd grown accustomed to seeing. "3 years, sir," Lily replied, her voice clear despite its softness. "I started when I was 10, just before—" She touched her scarf unconsciously, then quickly dropped her hand. "The nurses let me set up an easel by the window during treatments." Understanding flickered across the couple's faces, but their smiles never wavered. "We'll take this one," the woman decided firmly, reaching for her purse. "It'll look lovely in our sitting room, won't it, George?" As George carefully counted out the pounds, his wife squeezed Lily's hand gently. "Keep painting, dear. The world needs more beauty in it, especially from hearts as brave as yours." The warmth of their interaction lingered, even as they moved on, the carefully wrapped painting tucked securely under George's arm. But the next group to approach carried a different energy entirely. "Check it out," a teenage boy snickered to his friends, loud enough for Lily to hear. "Someone's running a charity art sale." His companions clustered around him, their designer clothes and casual cruelty marking them as students from one of London's more exclusive schools. "Guess everyone needs a hobby," a girl in the group remarked, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Even if it's just—" She gestured vaguely at the paintings, her expensive bracelet catching the morning light. Guard Thompson's jaw tightened imperceptibly as he observed the interaction. In Afghanistan, he'd learned to recognize different kinds of courage. The loud, obvious kind that showed in battle, and the quieter kind that faced daily struggles with dignity. Lily's straight spine and steady hands, as she endured the teenager's thinly veiled mockery, spoke of the latter. "Excuse me," a new voice cut through the tension. A mother with 2 young children stepped forward, deliberately placing herself between Lily and the group of teenagers. "Could you tell me about this one?" She pointed to a painting of the palace gardens, her smile genuine and warm. Lily's face brightened as she explained the technique she'd used to capture the play of light through the trees. The woman's children listened intently, their innocent questions about colours and shadows helping to drown out the retreating snickers of the teenage group. "We'll take it," the mother decided, pulling out her wallet. "Sophie's redecorating her room, and this will be perfect, won't it, darling?" Her daughter nodded enthusiastically, beaming at Lily. As the family moved away with their purchase, the morning crowd continued to grow. Snippets of conversation drifted across the courtyard. "Poor dear, so young. Beautiful work, though, such talent. Can't imagine what the family's going through. Should someone be letting her do this?" Each whispered comment reached Lily's ears, but she kept her focus on her remaining paintings, adjusting their positions with careful precision. The sun had risen higher now, and Guard Thompson could see beads of sweat forming on her forehead, though her posture remained determined. A businessman in an expensive suit paused briefly, his eyes moving from the paintings to Lily's scarf-covered head. He reached for his wallet, then hesitated as his phone rang. "Important call," he muttered, hurrying away without making eye contact. Through it all, Lily maintained her dignity, greeting each potential customer with the same gentle smile, explaining her techniques with quiet passion, accepting both sales and rejections with grace that belied her years. But Guard Thompson, trained to notice the smallest details, saw the slight tremor in her hands growing stronger as the morning wore on. "I don't think she should be allowed to do this here," a woman in designer sunglasses remarked loudly to her companion, making no effort to lower her voice. "It's Buckingham Palace, not some charity fair." Lily's fingers tightened around her paintbrush. She always kept one in her pocket for good luck. As more critical comments filtered through the growing crowd, the morning had warmed considerably, and beneath her carefully chosen scarf, her skin prickled with both heat and discomfort. "Probably just trying to get sympathy sales," a man in an expensive blazer commented, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone who thought they were being subtle. "I mean, look at her condition. It's a bit manipulative, isn't it?" Guard Thompson noticed the slight droop in Lily's shoulders, though she quickly straightened again, adjusting her remaining paintings with determined precision. His trained eye caught the way her hands trembled more noticeably now, how she occasionally steadied herself against the wall when she thought no one was looking. A young couple approached her display, their interest seemingly genuine until the woman whispered something to her partner about feeling obligated. They walked away quickly, leaving behind an awkward silence that felt heavier than any criticism. "5 paintings left," Lily murmured to herself, touching each one gently as if drawing strength from her own creations. Her voice carried just far enough for Thompson's sharp ears to catch. "Just 5 more, then I can make this month's payment." A group of office workers on their lunch break paused nearby, their conversation carrying clearly across the courtyard. "God, it just breaks your heart, doesn't it?" one woman said, dabbing at her eyes. "My sister's friend's daughter had the same thing. Didn't make it past Christmas." Lily's hands froze momentarily on the frame she was adjusting, but she kept her face carefully composed. Thompson felt something in his chest tighten. The same feeling he'd experienced in combat when watching a fellow soldier push through pain to complete their mission. "Should we buy one?" another office worker asked uncertainly. "I mean, it feels wrong not to." "But then we'd have to display it," her colleague replied in a stage whisper, "and every time you look at it, you'd think about, you know." They moved on, leaving their sentence unfinished, but their meaning clear. The sun had reached its zenith, and Lily's fatigue was becoming more evident. She reached into her small backpack for a water bottle, her movements slightly unsteady. A few drops spilled as she took a sip, darkening small spots on her dress. "Mummy!" a child's voice rang out, clear and innocent. "Why is that girl's head wrapped up? Is she playing dress-up?" "Hush, darling," the mother responded, hurrying past. "We don't talk about such things." Thompson watched as Lily squared her shoulders once more, though the effort clearly cost her. She had the same look he'd seen in young soldiers facing their first real test, determined, scared, but refusing to show either emotion. An older man in a tour guide's uniform approached, his face kind, but his words cutting. "Miss, I'm not sure you have permission to sell here. Perhaps somewhere else would be more appropriate." Lily began to gather her paintings with trembling hands, tears threatening but held firmly in check. But before she could pack up her first piece, Guard Thompson made a decision that would change both their lives, though neither of them knew it yet. With military precision, he stepped away from his post. The movement was so unexpected that several tourists gasped, their cameras lowering in surprise. His boots clicked against the stone courtyard as he approached Lily's display, each step measured and deliberate. Lily's eyes widened with alarm as she noticed his approach. "I'm so sorry," she began quickly, her hands fumbling to gather her remaining paintings. "I know I shouldn't be selling here. I'll pack up right away, I promise. Please don't—" "At ease," Thompson's voice was gentle, but carried the quiet authority of his years of service. He knelt beside her display, bringing himself to her eye level. "I'm not here to send you away." The crowd had grown silent, phones raised to capture this unprecedented moment. Lily stood frozen, one painting clutched protectively to her chest, uncertainty written across her face. "These are remarkable," Thompson said, gesturing to her work. "Especially this one." He pointed to a watercolour of the palace at sunset, where golden light seemed to dance across the ancient stones. "The way you've captured the light, it reminds me of my wife's work." Your wife?" Lily's voice trembled slightly, her grip on the painting loosening as surprise replaced fear. Thompson nodded, a small smile softening his usually stern features. She's an art teacher at the Royal College of Art, been painting for 30 years. He studied another piece carefully. She'd love your technique with watercolours. Lily's face brightened slightly, though confusion still lingered in her eyes. But aren't you breaking rules? Standing here, talking to me? Sometimes, Thompson replied, his voice carrying a weight earned in combat. Rules need to bend when something more important is at stake. He gestured to her paintings. Would you tell me about them? About why you're here? The crowd leaned in slightly. Collective breath held as Lily hesitated, then slowly nodded. I started painting during my first round of chemo, she said softly but with growing strength. The nurses brought me supplies after they saw me sketching on napkins, said it might help pass the time, but it became more than that. Thompson listened intently as she continued. Each painting is a day I fought back. When I felt too sick to move, I'd imagine these scenes, plan how I'd capture them, once I was strong enough to hold a brush again. She touched her scarf unconsciously. The treatments are expensive, and my mum, she works so hard, but... How much for the whole collection? Thompson asked, suddenly, his voice carrying across the now silent courtyard. Lily blinked in surprise. Oh, no, sir, I couldn't. Actually, Thompson straightened to his full height, addressing the gathered crowd with parade ground authority. I have a better idea. His voice carried clearly across the courtyard. Today only, anyone who purchases one of these masterpieces will get something extra special. A photograph with a Queen's Guard. The effect was immediate. The same tourists who had been whispering and avoiding eye contact suddenly surged forward. The teenagers who had mocked earlier pushed to the front, wallets appearing as if by magic. I'll take this one. How much for the sunset piece? Is this one still available? Lily stood in stunned silence as her paintings began disappearing, each sale accompanied by a proper pose and photo with Guard Thompson, who maintained perfect military bearing even as he broke every rule in the book. My wife was diagnosed 3 years ago, he said quietly to Lily between photos, explaining what had prompted his actions. Art therapy helped her through the darkest days. She's in remission now, teaching again, stronger than ever. His eyes met Lily's with understanding that went beyond words. Your courage this morning, standing here despite everything, it reminds me of her. Tears welled in Lily's eyes, but these were different from the ones she'd fought back earlier. Thank you, she whispered. I simply must have this one of the Tower Bridge, declared the woman in designer sunglasses, who had earlier suggested Lily shouldn't be allowed to sell there. She now spoke with exaggerated warmth, as if they had been friends all along. Such talent, absolutely remarkable. My mum's an art collector, one girl announced loudly, her previous sneering tone replaced with forced casualness. She'd love these. I'll take 2. Guard Thompson maintained his military bearing through each photo, but his eyes never strayed far from Lily. He watched as colour returned to her cheeks, as her hands steadied with each successful sale, as hope replaced exhaustion in her bearing. Miss, a businessman in an expensive suit, the same one who had walked away earlier, approached with an air of importance. I represent a small gallery in Mayfair. Perhaps we could discuss. She has a prior commitment, Thompson interrupted smoothly, his voice carrying the kind of authority that brooked no argument. The businessman retreated hastily, nodding in apologetic understanding. A young mother pushed forward through the crowd, her 2 children clutching pocket money in their small fists. We've been saving for ice cream, the little girl announced proudly, holding out a handful of coins, but we want to buy a painting instead. Lily knelt down to their level, selecting one of her smaller pieces, a cheerful study of palace pigeons that made both children giggle. How about we make a special price for special customers, she suggested, accepting their carefully counted coins with the same grace she'd shown to larger purchases. The children beamed as Thompson posed with them for their photo, his stern expression softening just slightly as the little girl whispered, "You're a really nice guard, sir." More customers pressed forward, each sale now accompanied by words of encouragement and support. "My sister went through the same thing," one woman confided as she selected a painting. "She's 5 years cancer-free now. Stay strong, love." "My daughter's an art student," another customer shared while waiting for his photo. "Would you mind if I took your contact information? Her university does wonderful workshops for young artists." Lily's remaining paintings disappeared quickly, each one finding a home with someone eager to share their own connection, their own story, their own words of hope. The crowd's energy had shifted from pity to genuine admiration, their earlier discomfort transformed into open support. "Only one left," Lily murmured in amazement, touching the frame of her final piece. A delicate watercolour of the palace grounds in spring, cherry blossoms drifting across the canvas like pale pink hopes. "I'll pay double the asking price," someone called from the crowd. "Triple it," another voice countered. "Name your price," a third chimed in. Lily stood before her last painting, overwhelmed by the sudden bidding war. Her hands trembled slightly, but now from excitement rather than fatigue. The morning's despair felt like a distant memory as calls of increasingly generous offers filled the air. Guard Thompson watched the scene unfold, noting how Lily's posture had transformed. She stood straighter now, her artist's spirit shining through her fatigue. The crowd's enthusiasm, though late in coming, had worked a kind of magic that no medicine could match. £200, £250, £300. The amounts kept rising, but Thompson could see something in Lily's eyes as she looked at the final painting, a special attachment to this particular piece. He recognized that look from his wife's battles, how some art became more than just paint on canvas, becoming instead a testimony to survival itself. The time had come, he decided, to make one final gesture that would change everything. £500, Guard Thompson's voice cut through the bidding war like a well-polished sword. The crowd fell silent immediately, all eyes turning to the guard who had already broken so many protocols. "But sir," Lily began hesitantly, "that's far too much. For a masterpiece that captures the heart of what I protect every day," Thompson smiled gently, "I'd say it's a bargain." He moved closer to the final painting, studying it with genuine appreciation. "These cherry blossoms. My wife painted something similar during her hardest days of treatment. Said it helped her remember that spring always follows winter." The crowd watched in respectful silence as Thompson reached into his uniform pocket, withdrawing a carefully folded envelope. "I was saving this for my wife's birthday next week," he explained, "but I think she'd agree this is a better use." He handed the envelope to Lily, whose hands trembled as she accepted it. "Speaking of my wife," Thompson continued, his voice carrying both authority and warmth, "she happens to run the youth outreach program at the Royal College of Art. They're always looking for promising young artists." He pulled out a business card from another pocket, offering it to Lily. "Call this number tomorrow. Ask for Sarah Thompson. Tell her Michael sent you." Lily stared at the card in disbelief, her eyes filling with tears. "But why?" "Because talent deserves nurturing," Thompson replied simply, "and courage deserves rewarding." He glanced at his watch. "What time is your appointment?" 2:00, Lily answered softly. "At St. Mary's." Thompson nodded, carefully wrapping the final painting. "My wife's was always at 2 as well. Said it gave her morning light for painting." He tucked the wrapped artwork under his arm. "Take my card. Call tomorrow. Sarah will arrange everything. Scholarships, materials, proper training. You have a gift, Lily. Let us help you develop it." The tears Lily had been holding back all morning finally spilled over. But these were different. Tears of joy, of hope, of unexpected kindness. Without warning, she threw her arms around Thompson's waist, hugging him tightly. For a moment, the guard stood still, surprised by the sudden embrace. Then, with the same precision he applied to his duties, he knelt down and returned the hug properly. "Stand tall, young artist," he whispered. "Your greatest masterpieces are yet to come." The crowd, many wiping their own eyes, burst into spontaneous applause. As Thompson helped Lily pack up her empty display, several people pressed additional bills into her hands, refusing to take no for an answer. "For art supplies," one woman insisted. "For your next canvas," another added. "For never stopping," a third contributed. With her backpack full of hope and her heart full of gratitude, Lily gave Thompson one final salute. Not the mocking kind tourists sometimes attempted, but a genuine gesture of respect that the guard returned with equal sincerity. As she turned to leave for her appointment, Thompson called out one last time, "Lily?" She paused, looking back. "The palace gardens are particularly beautiful at sunrise, perfect for painting." His meaning was clear. She would always have a place here. Watching her disappear into the London afternoon, Thompson returned to his post with measured steps. His uniform was slightly wrinkled from the hug, his protocol thoroughly broken, but as he resumed his guard position, he stood straighter than ever. A few tourists lingered, clutching their newly acquired paintings and sharing quiet conversations about what they'd witnessed. The woman in designer sunglasses carefully wrapped her purchase, saying to no one in particular, "You know, I think I'll hang this in my daughter's room. Might teach her something about real courage." The teenage group that had mocked Lily earlier stood quietly by the gates, their expensive phones forgotten in their hands. One girl wiped her eyes quickly, mumbling something about allergies. Her friend squeezed her hand, both of them changed by what they'd seen. Through his forward gaze, Thompson caught glimpses of Lily making her way down the street, her empty backpack swinging lighter now, her steps more confident than they had been that morning. She paused at the corner, turning back one last time to wave, not to the crowd, not to the palace, but to the guard who had shown her that some traditions were meant to be broken in service of something greater. Tomorrow, Thompson knew, his wife Sarah would receive a call from a young artist with an extraordinary spirit. Tomorrow, wheels would be set in motion that would change Lily's life. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, its own challenges, its own moments of doubt. But today he had witnessed true courage, not the kind he'd seen in combat, though that too required great strength. This was the quiet courage of a young girl fighting her battles with a paintbrush instead of a sword, facing her fears with colours instead of armour. As the afternoon crowd began to thin, Thompson maintained his watch just as he had for countless days before, but now he stood guard over more than just the palace. He stood guard over the memory of this day, over the hope he'd seen bloom in a young artist's eyes, over the reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of duty come from listening to one's heart. The cherry blossoms in Lily's final painting would soon hang in his wife's studio, a testament to the day when protocol gave way to compassion, when a guard chose to protect something more precious than stone and ceremony. And somewhere in London, a young girl was heading to her appointment with renewed strength, knowing that her art had found not just buyers, but believers. What would you have done in Guard Thompson's position? When is it right to break tradition to help someone in need? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the most powerful acts of guardianship go beyond protecting buildings and boundaries. They're about protecting hope, nurturing dreams, and standing up for those who need it most. Today's story reminds us that true strength often lies not in maintaining protocol, but in knowing when to let humanity shine through. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about the Royal Guards who stand as living symbols of both strength and compassion. Hit that bell icon to ensure you never miss our future uploads. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone's kindness changed everything? When has someone's support given you the strength to keep fighting? Share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to check out our other videos appearing on your screen right now. Until next time, remember that sometimes the greatest duty is the one your heart commands you to perform. Remember, every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to paint someone's world with hope.